My name is Alina Cross. I'm 30 years old. And the moment I stepped through the front door of the Hawthorne family's mansion with a baby on my shoulder, I knew I had already been judged, dismissed, and quietly condemned. Vivian Hawthorne didn't bother hiding it. Her eyes swept over me slowly, deliberately, like a customs officer searching for contraband. They lingered on my faded sweater, the kind that had survived too many washes and too many years. Then my scuffed flats. Then the baby, soft, drooling, blissfully unaware that she had just been labeled a liability. Vivian's smile appeared a second too late and disappeared a second too early. The kind of smile people wear when politeness is required but warmth is optional. "So," she said coolly, "this is the girlfriend. Not welcome. Not nice to finally meet you." Just that. As if I were a poorly chosen accessory her son had forgotten to return. I felt the air shift behind me. Polished marble floors, crystal light fixtures. The faint scent of expensive candles that never get burned. Everything about the house screamed money. The kind of money that's been around long enough to feel entitled to judge those without it. The baby on my shoulder gurgled happily, tugging at my hair. I adjusted her reflexively, murmuring softly, my body already in the practiced rhythm of care. Vivian watched the movement with visible restraint, as if affection were something messy that might stain the furniture. What she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the woman standing in her foyer, wearing clearance clothes, and holding a borrowed baby made more money in a month than her son did in half a year. She didn't know that I had chosen this version of myself carefully, and she certainly didn't know that this night was never about impressing her. It was about observing her. "Mum," Ethan said gently beside me, a warning wrapped in a son's loyalty. "This is Alina. And this is Lily." Vivian glanced at the baby again, her lips tightening. "Charming," she replied, in a tone that suggested the exact opposite. "Do come in. Just be careful, careful." As if I were carrying something fragile instead of being the one constantly bracing myself. I stepped inside. The foyer opened into a dining room large enough to host a small political summit. A table meant for 12 was set for 6, every plate trimmed in gold, every glass cut crystal. I suddenly became acutely aware of the diaper bag slung over my shoulder, its zipper slightly broken. I belonged here about as much as a rainstorm at a garden party. Introductions followed quickly. Ethan's father, Charles, shook my hand politely. His grip was firm, his eyes observant. He said little, but I noticed everything about him. The way his gaze lingered just long enough to register details. The way he didn't look away when Vivian spoke over him. Then there was Marissa, Ethan's younger sister. Perfect hair, perfect makeup, perfect disdain. She glanced at the baby and wrinkled her nose. "Oh, you brought her, not her name. Just her." I smiled anyway. I had perfected that smile. Soft, non-confrontational, easy to underestimate. Dinner hadn't even started yet, and the verdict was already clear. Single woman, baby. No visible wealth, wrong shoes, disposable. Vivian took her seat at the head of the table like a queen assuming her throne. "So, Alina," she said smoothly, lifting her winey glass. "Tell us what you do." I had rehearsed this. Dozens of times, in mirrors, in the shower, in the car. "I work part-time at a dental office," I said calmly. "Mostly paperwork, scheduling, that sort of thing." Her eyebrow arched just slightly, a micro-expression of triumph. "Part-time," she echoed. "With a child. I suppose that's all you can manage." I nodded, as if accepting the implied limitation instead of recognizing it for what it was. A dismissal. Inside, I counted backward. 5, 4, 3. This was only the beginning. Because here was the truth Vivian Hawthorne would never guess by looking at me. I was one of the most sought after specialists in my field. Doctors waited weeks for my work. My hands shaped precision measured in microns. And in 4 months, I would have a title she respected far more than kindness or character. Doctor. But tonight I was not here as Dr. Alina Cross. Tonight, I was the woman they thought was nothing. And I let them believe it. Because people reveal their worst selves when they think you have no power to respond. Vivian lifted her glass again, her smile sharp and satisfied. And I watched her closely, already knowing one thing with absolute certainty. She had no idea who she was dealing with. People assume women hide their strength because they're afraid of it. The truth is worse. We hide it because we've seen what happens when we don't. 3 years before I ever walked into the Hawthorne mansion, pretending to be broke and overwhelmed, I was engaged to a man named Daniel Price. Back then, I didn't know how to make myself smaller. I didn't know how to dull my shine or soften my accomplishments. I thought love meant honesty, and honesty meant letting someone see all of you, especially the parts you'd worked hardest to build. Daniel and I had been together for 2 years. 2 comfortable, predictable years filled with shared dinners, weekend plans, and vague promises about the future. He was charming in a way that felt safe, familiar, the kind of man who knew how to listen just well enough to seem supportive. One night, while we were sprawled on my couch, he asked me a simple question. "So, how much do you actually make?" It didn't sound threatening. Just curiosity, a natural next step between two people planning a life together. I told him. I remember feeling proud as I said the number, not smug, just satisfied. I had worked relentlessly to get there. Late nights, missed holidays, years of precision and patience that most people never see or understand. At first, Daniel smiled. "Wow," he said. "That's amazing." But something in his voice shifted, subtle, almost imperceptible. The warmth drained away, replaced by something tight and unfamiliar. That night was the last normal night we ever had. Within a week, everything changed. Suddenly, my ambition was intimidating. My success was emasculating. My confidence made him feel less than. He started picking fights over nothing, commenting on how often I worked, accusing me of caring more about my career than about him. He said being with me felt like a competition, one he could never win. The worst part, I hadn't even known we were competing. A month later, he was gone. 3 months after that, he married a woman who worked as a server at a diner near his apartment. He posted their wedding photos online with a caption that burned itself into my memory. "Finally found a woman who lets me be a man." I saw it at 2 in the morning. Alone in my apartment, eating ice cream straight from the container like a klutche, I didn't even have the energy to resent. Something inside me broke that night. For a year after Daniel left, I existed in survival mode. Work, home, sleep, repeat. I stopped answering messages, stopped going out, stopped believing that love and ambition could exist in the same space. The only person who didn't give up on me was Renee Lawson. Renee and I had known each other since childhood, though we'd never been close. She was spontaneous where I was structured, loud where I was reserved. But when I was at my lowest, she showed up with cheap wine, terrible advice, and an unwavering refusal to let me disappear. So when Renee got pregnant unexpectedly and had baby Lily, I stepped in without hesitation. At first, it was just helping out. A few afternoons here and there, then full days, then weeks that blurred together until Lily felt like she'd always been part of my life. Renee tried. She really did. But motherhood hit her harder than she'd expected. The responsibility, the routine, the permanence. It overwhelmed her. Eventually, we made an arrangement that worked for both of us. I took care of Lily most of the time. Renee paid me a small amount each month. She kept her freedom. I got purpose. Somewhere in that quiet, domestic rhythm, feeding bottles, folding tiny clothes, rocking a baby to sleep, an idea took shape. What if the next man I loved never knew how successful I was? What if I showed him the version of me that had nothing to offer financially? No impressive title, no safety net, no status, just exhaustion, responsibility, and vulnerability. If he could love that woman, if he could respect her, choose her, defend her, then maybe he deserved to know the rest. And if he couldn't, better to learn early than to bleed again. So I created the role carefully, worn sweaters, minimal makeup, hair pulled back in a way that said too tired to care. I practiced saying things like, "Money's tight this month," and "I'm just getting by," until they sounded natural. I erased my digital footprint. No social media. No online presence. The professional Alina Cross existed in a separate world, one carefully walled off from the woman pushing a stroller and counting change at the coffee shop. I called it protection. Others might call it manipulation. Then I met Ethan Hawthorne. And for the first time since Daniel, my heart did something dangerous. It hoped. I didn't know yet whether Ethan would pass my test. But I knew exactly why the test existed. Because I had learned the hard way that power, when revealed too early, doesn't always inspire love. Sometimes it exposes fear, and fear makes people cruel. I met Ethan Hawthorne on a Tuesday afternoon in a coffee shop that smelled like burnt espresso and cinnamon pastries. I remember the day clearly because Lily had been fussy for hours. Nothing soothed her. Not the bottle, not the stroller, not the soft singing that usually worked. I was exhausted in the way only caregivers understand, the kind of tired that settles into your bones and makes even small decisions feel heavy. The line was long. Lily started crying. Heads turned. I felt the familiar heat of embarrassment creep up my neck. The quiet judgment of strangers who believed a crying baby was a public inconvenience instead of a human being expressing need. That's when Ethan stepped forward. "Hey," he said gently, offering a napkin as Lily spit up on my sleeve. "Looks like you could use reinforcements." I laughed before I could stop myself, short, surprised, real. "You have no idea." He didn't make a face, didn't recoil. He didn't even glance at the stain on my sweater. Instead, he waved the barista forward. "I've got her order. And whatever she needs after." I protested, of course. Habit, pride. But he shook his head, smiling. "Let me. It's just coffee." That was the first thing that caught my attention. He didn't see helping as charity. He saw it as normal. We ended up sharing a small table by the window. Lily calmed down in his presence, as if she sensed something steady in him that I had almost forgotten existed. He made ridiculous faces until she giggled, completely unbothered by the attention it drew. "I'm Ethan," he said finally. "Alina," I replied. "And this is Lily? She's beautiful," he said without hesitation. Not polite, not performative, just honest. I told him the version of my life I had carefully prepared. I worked part-time at a dental office. I helped raise Lily for a friend. Money was tight, but we managed. He didn't interrupt, didn't offer solutions or judgment. He just listened, his attention steady and unforced. "I work in consulting," he said when it was his turn. "Long hours, too many meetings. But it pays the bills." He didn't mention his family, didn't brag, didn't inflate himself. By the time we left the coffee shop, Lily asleep in my arms, I felt something unsettling. Comfort. Our second meeting was intentional. Our third became a routine. We walked in the park. We ate cheap takeout on my couch. He learned Lily's bedtime rituals faster than I expected. He never complained when plans changed because Lily was sick. Never sighed when I canceled last minute. Never acted like I owed him gratitude for understanding my limitations. Instead, he adapted. Weeks turned into months. I watched him closely, far more closely than he realized. I noticed how he treated waitstaff, how he spoke to strangers, how he handled inconvenience. He never rushed Lily, never treated her like baggage. When people stared, he didn't flinch. When money came up, he didn't pry. Once, when my car broke down, he offered to help pay for repairs. I refused. He didn't argue. He simply asked if I was okay and offered a ride instead. Another time, I hinted that rent might be late. He didn't lecture me. Didn't suggest I move. Didn't try to take control. He just asked how he could support me, and slowly, against my better judgment, my walls began to thin. The night he told me he loved me, Lily was asleep between us on the couch, her tiny hand curled into his shirt. "I know this isn't easy," he said quietly. "But I want this. I want you. All of it. All of it." The words landed harder than I expected. Because he didn't know all of it. Not really. I should have told him then. Should have confessed everything before it went further. But fear is persuasive. So is hope. When Ethan asked if I would finally meet his family, my stomach twisted instinctively. "They're traditional," he warned. "Especially my mother." I smiled, already knowing what that meant. People like Vivian Hawthorne didn't just judge. They evaluated. I agreed to dinner anyway. Because the test was never about whether Ethan loved me. It was about whether he would stand beside me when others tried to make me feel small. And as I packed Lily's bag that night, folding her clothes with deliberate care, I understood something with perfect clarity. This wasn't just a test of love anymore. It was a test of character, and once it began, there would be no going back. The Hawthorne mansion looked different at night. By day, it was impressive. By evening, it was predatory. The long driveway curved like a warning. lined with perfectly trimmed hedges that felt less decorative and more defensive. The house itself loomed at the end, all stone and glass and quiet authority, designed to intimidate without ever raising its voice. Lily stirred in her car seat as we pulled in. I reached back to soothe her, my pulse steady but alert. Ethan glanced at me. "You okay?" I nodded. "I'm fine. It wasn't a lie. I wasn't afraid. I was prepared." Vivian Hawthorne greeted us at the door, elegant and composed, dressed as if she were attending a charity gala instead of hosting a family dinner. Her eyes immediately went to Lily, then to the diaper bag, then back to my face. The assessment was instant. Approval was not. "Welcome," she said coolly, stepping aside. "Do come in." Inside, everything gleamed. Polished floors. Framed art that probably cost more than my car. The kind of home that whispered old money and never apologized for it. Charles Hawthorne shook my hand politely. "Nice to meet you, Alina." Marissa barely nodded. Her eyes flicked to Lily, then away, already bored. Dinner was announced before any real conversation could begin, as if food were a tool meant to keep everyone seated and contained. The table was long, formal, and deliberately uninviting. Lily sat in a high chair someone had clearly retrieved at the last minute. The message was subtle but clear: you weren't planned for. Vivian took the head of the table. "Power position." "So," she said after the first course was served, folding her napkin with practiced grace. "Ethan tells us you work part-time." "Yes," I replied evenly. "At a dental office, wasn't it?" Her smile tightened. "How practical." Marissa smirked into her wineglass. Vivian tilted her head. "And the baby, she's yours." "No," I said calmly. "I help take care of her." "How generous," Vivian replied, though her tone suggested foolishness rather than kindness. "That must make things complicated." Translation: why would my son involve himself in someone else's mess? Lily began to fuss, her tiny face scrunching in discomfort. I reached for her instinctively. Vivian's eyes narrowed. "Is she always this expressive?" I smiled softly. "Only when she needs something." "Children should learn early not to demand attention," Vivian said, lifting her glass. Ethan stiffened beside me. "Mom." "It's just an observation," she replied smoothly. The questions continued. How much rent did I pay? Did I plan to work full-time again? What kind of future could I realistically offer? Each one was wrapped in politeness and delivered with surgical precision. Not loud, not cruel, calculated. At one point, Marissa leaned across the table. "Did you know Ethan's ex Claire just got promoted? She's doing very well. No children, of course. Lots of freedom." The message was clear. I was a downgrade. Lily knocked her spoon to the floor. It clattered loudly against the tile. Vivian flinched. "Honestly," she said, sighing, "this is hardly an environment for a child." I bent to retrieve the spoon, my movements slow and deliberate. I could end this at any moment. I could tell her who I was, what I earned, what I was about to become. But power is more effective when it's withheld. After dinner, Vivian cornered me near the restroom. "I'll be frank," she said quietly, her voice sharp beneath the politeness. "Ethan has a future. He doesn't need distractions." I met her gaze unblinking. "Is that what you think Lily is?" Her lips pressed together. "I think you should consider what's best for everyone involved. Especially you," she didn't say. Because women like Vivian believed pressure was most effective when it was implied. When I returned to the dining room, Ethan looked at me with concern. "Everything okay?" "Yes," I said, smiling. "Perfect." As we left later that night, Lily asleep in my arms, Vivian watched us from the doorway. Her expression was satisfied. She thought she had won. What she didn't realize was that she had just revealed everything I needed to know. Because wolves don't attack strangers. They attack what they believe is weak. And the moment Vivian Hawthorne decided I was nothing, she became my problem. I didn't expect kindness from the Hawthorne family. I especially didn't expect it from Eleanor Hawthorne. She found me the next morning in the garden behind the mansion, sitting on a stone bench with Lily bundled against my chest. The air was cool and quiet, the kind of calm that settles after a night of tension. I had slipped outside early, hoping for a few moments of silence before we left. Eleanor approached slowly, leaning on a polished wooden cane. Her silver hair was neatly styled, her posture upright despite her age. She wore a simple cardigan, nothing flashy, nothing performative. "You hold her like you mean it," she said, nodding toward Lily. I looked up, startled. "I'm sorry?" "The baby," she clarified. "Some people hold children like accessories. You hold her like she matters." The words caught me off guard. "Thank you," I said softly. She lowered herself onto the bench beside me with care. For a moment, we sat in silence, watching the morning light filter through the trees. "My daughter-in-law can be formidable," Eleanor said at last. That was one word for it. "She has always believed strength looks a certain way," Eleanor continued. "Money, status, appearances," she sighed. "It has blinded her." I said nothing. I had learned that listening often revealed more than speaking. "You should know," Eleanor added, her voice gentle but steady. "You're not the first woman she's tried to push away." That got my attention. "There were others," she said. "Kind women. Intelligent women. Women who loved Ethan." Vivian found fault in all of them. "Why?" I asked quietly. Eleanor smiled sadly. "Because none of them were hers to control." The words settled heavily between us. "She will test you," Eleanor said, relentlessly. "Not because she doubts you, but because she fears what she can't dominate." I thought of the dinner table, the questions, the calculated cruelty. "I can handle myself," I said. Eleanor studied me closely, her sharp eyes missing nothing. "I believe that," she replied. "But strength doesn't mean fighting every battle openly." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded card, pressing it into my hand. "If you ever need help," she said simply, "call me." I looked at the name printed there, the elegant script unmistakable. "You don't even know me," I said. She smiled. "I know enough." When we returned inside, Ethan was on the phone, his expression tight. He hung up as soon as he saw us. "That was my mother," he said. "She wanted to discuss boundaries." My stomach tightened. "And?" I asked. "I told her she crossed a line," he said firmly. "That you and Lily deserve respect." The words sent a quiet shock through me. He had noticed. And more importantly, he had acted. Later that afternoon, we stopped by a small cafe near the estate. As we sat down, Ethan hesitated. "There's something else," he said. "My ex Claire reached out." I kept my expression neutral. "She heard I was seeing someone," he continued. "She wants to meet. Catch up." "And how do you feel about that?" I asked. I told her no. He said immediately, "There's nothing to catch up on." Relief washed through me. Quick, unexpected, dangerous. That night, as Lily slept between us again, I thought about Eleanor's warning. Vivian Hawthorne wasn't done, but neither was I. For the first time, I wasn't alone in this. And sometimes, the most powerful ally isn't the loudest voice in the room. It's the one that's been watching all along. The ultimatum didn't come all at once. It came in pieces. In phone calls Ethan took outside. In tense silences at dinner. In the way his mother's name began to surface more often, always followed by a sigh. I felt it before I heard it. That familiar tightening in my chest. The instinct that warned me when the ground beneath my feet was starting to shift. So I set the final test in motion. 2 weeks after the dinner, I called Ethan late one evening, my voice carefully unsteady. "I think something's wrong," I said. He was at work. I could hear the low murmur of voices behind him. Everything stopped on his end instantly. "What happened? Are you okay? Is Lily okay?" I don't know," I replied. "Rennie needs help, and my hours got cut. I might not be able to cover rent this month." The words tasted strange in my mouth. I hated lying like this. But the truth demanded clarity, and clarity required pressure. "I can help," he said immediately. "We'll figure it out." "That's the thing," I whispered. "I don't want to be a burden." There it was, the moment where men like Daniel had flinched, where pride curdled into resentment. Ethan didn't hesitate. "You're not a burden," he said firmly. "You're my partner." 2 days later, he showed up at my apartment with groceries, diapers, and a quiet determination that unsettled me more than any grand gesture could have. "We can move you somewhere cheaper," he said gently, "or you could stay with me. Temporarily. No pressure." I watched him carefully. He wasn't trying to rescue me. He wasn't trying to control me. He was offering support without strings. I agreed to stay a few nights. That was all it took. Vivian found out within a week. She called him into the family home on a Sunday morning. No invitation for me, no explanation. Just come alone. When he returned that evening, he was quiet. Not angry. Not withdrawn. Focused. They gave me a choice, he said finally. My heart stilled. A choice. My mother thinks I'm making a mistake, he continued. She says you're unstable. That the baby complicates everything. That I'm sacrificing my future. I swallowed. And what did you say? I said she doesn't get to define my future. I let out a breath I hadn't. Ethan proposed on an ordinary morning. No crowd. No grand announcement. No performance. Just the two of us in a quiet coffee shop, the same one where we had met, Lily asleep in her stroller beside the table. He didn't kneel. He simply reached across the table, took my hand, and said, I don't want a life where you're optional. I want the hard days. I want the mess. I want you. For a moment, the world went still. Yes, I said. That was when the truth could no longer wait. We sat there long after, his thumb tracing slow circles against my skin. My heart was calm in a way it had never been before. Ethan, I said finally. There's something you need to know. He looked up immediately. What is it? I took a breath. Then another. My job, I said. The one I told you about. He smiled faintly. The dental office. I don't work there anymore, I said gently. The smile faded, but not into suspicion. Into attention. I'm a medical specialist, I continued. I consult. I train. I publish. And in 4 months, I'll officially hold the title your mother respects more than anything. He stared at me. I make more than enough to support myself, I added. And Lily isn't my daughter. She's Renee's. I help raise her. Silence stretched between us. I didn't rush to fill it. Finally, he exhaled slowly. You tested me. Yes, I said. And I hate that I had to. He leaned back, processing. I watched every shift of emotion, surprise, confusion, hurt. Then understanding. You were afraid, he said quietly. Yes, he nodded once. I get that. That was when Vivian walked in. She froze when she saw us. Then recovered quickly, her expression sharpening as she took in Ethan's hand still holding mine. So, she said coolly. This is where you've been. Ethan stood. We're engaged. Vivian's smile shattered. Engaged, she echoed. To her, I rose calmly. Yes. Vivian's gaze flicked to Lily. And the child. Not mine, I said. But even if she were, it wouldn't change anything. Vivian scoffed. You've deceived my son. I met her eyes steadily. No. I protected myself, she laughed, sharp, incredulous. By pretending to be someone you're not. By allowing you to show me exactly who you are. I replied evenly. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I wanted to know whether your son loved me without status, without comfort, without approval. I continued. He did. That's why he deserves the truth. Vivian turned to Ethan. You can't seriously accept this. I already have, he said. Her face flushed. You think money fixes betrayal. I think integrity matters more than your opinion, he replied. People nearby were watching now. Vivian noticed, and stiffened. I reached into my bag and placed a business card on the table. My real contact information, I said calmly. In case you'd like to verify who I am. Vivian didn't touch it. But her hands were shaking, because for the first time she wasn't in control. And she knew it. Vivian Hawthorne didn't collapse publicly. Women like her never do. Instead, she unraveled quietly, behind closed doors in conversations that ended too abruptly, in invitations that stopped arriving. Word travels fast in certain circles. Especially when it's true. Within weeks of the coffee shop confrontation, subtle shifts began to surface. Longtime friends became distant. Charity boards postponed meetings. A foundation she had once chaired suddenly decided to restructure. No one confronted her directly. They didn't have to. Power doesn't disappear in a dramatic explosion, it erodes. Ethan noticed first. My mother hasn't been invited to the Patterson Gala, he said one evening, disbelief coloring his voice. She's been going for 20 years. I said nothing. I didn't need to. People who build their status on control rarely survive exposure. Eleanor Hawthorne called me one afternoon. I wanted you to know, she said gently. You did nothing wrong. I smiled, even though she couldn't see it. Thank you. She taught Ethan a lesson without meaning to. Eleanor continued. And you taught her one she needed far earlier in life. Lily's situation resolved with grace. Renee, steadier now, took a more active role. The transition was slow, intentional, and filled with care. I remained part of Lily's life, but without carrying the weight alone. That was peace. My promotion came quietly. No announcement, no applause. Just a new title, new responsibilities, and a door that opened because I had earned the right to walk through it. Dr. Alina Cross. Vivian found out through someone else. I didn't tell her. I didn't need to. The engagement party was small. No spectacle, no performances, just people who mattered. Vivian did not attend. Ethan didn't flinch when he noticed. She made her choice, he said simply. On our wedding day, Eleanor held my hands and said, "Never apologize for your strength." I never did. Looking back, I understand something clearly now. Revenge isn't always about destruction. Sometimes, it's about refusing to be diminished. About letting truth stand where cruelty once thrived. About walking away whole. They thought I was nothing. They were wrong. And I never had to raise my voice to prove it.